New Year. I was gonna say Happy New Week. I hope you have started the week well. Today I wanted to go live to talk about how to prepare for a scouting trip. How to prepare for a scouting trip, and first of all, why are scouting trips really important? You might decide to move to a new destination and just go because you hear it's great, but it might not be the right place for you. So I always recommend that you go on a recon trip, if you want to call it recon, scouting, however you want to call it. But basically, it's a time that you spend at the destination to check it out, to see if you like it, if you like the vibe and everything, and trying to spend as much time as possible there, not in a touristy way, but more like living like a local if you can, and then making the decision if this is the right place for you or not. Okay, so if you're live, say hi. Hey, so excited for this topic. Me too. Me too. Thank you for joining Live D. I appreciate you. So I have my notes here. I think about probably 2 years ago, I did a video on the same topic as I think it was as I was preparing or when I came back from our scouting trip to Abidjan. And I figured this would be a good time to kind of refresh and based on my experience then to kind of revisit the topic and share some notes that I have here for you guys. All right, so the first note that I had, the first point, and why I strongly believe that you need to go on a scouting trip is because it gives you a chance to check out the vibe. Because a lot of people might say, well, Medellin is the best place to go, Portugal is the best place to go, you need to you need to come to Tokyo, whatever the destination, people will tell you about their own experience, okay? It's just like when you see those lists online about the 10 best place to retire, the 10 best place to do X, Y, and Z, right? But that doesn't mean that is the best place for you. So in order for you to know if it's the best place for you, if it's the right place for you, you need to go to that place. You need to go to the destination and figure it out. Trying to feel the vibe. How does it smell? How do you feel there? Okay. And with the vibe, also, how do you feel there in terms of safety? You can look at some reports from the Department of State, for example. But I wouldn't just rely on those because you know how it is with the Department of State. They're going to say, "Oh, it's always red everywhere." But anyways, so it's more like how you personally feel when you're there. Do you feel safe as a woman walking down the streets by yourself? Can you do that? Can you walk? Can you take public transportation and feel comfortable being by yourself, right? So you won't know that until you go there and do it yourself. So looking at the vibe, looking at how if it's a fast speed of life, like if it's a if everything is really fast and hustle, or if it's like a slower pace of life, and how will you adjust to these things? A specific example that I had, it wasn't a scouting trip, but it was one day that we went to Canada. And it was a weekend, and we were just surprised that the stores were closing this early and that they were not 24 hours. And that on Sundays, most of the stores were closed. And we thought that, okay, Canada was like the US in a way, but no, it wasn't. So, would you be okay with that? Would you be okay knowing that not all the information is going to be found online, that you have to go there in person, or you have to text people, or you have to, it's just not the same way as it is here. And so you have to know that once you're there. That's how you'll be able to basically know that. If you are a business owner, how is the business environment in terms of facilities, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of if there's any kind of taxes, regulations, or anything like that that will facilitate your business and all that. Hey, Eileen, good to see you here. So in terms of your business, knowing the market, if it's going to be something that you can actually do there, or if it's something that's going to be strictly online and you're not going to have clients locally. And if you do, then what are the tax ramifications with that as well? If you're allowed to actually work there or to get clients that are local. Another point is if you have kids in terms of schools, can you go and visit some schools? That's something that I did in Abidjan, and it was good to see that, okay, and to be able to visualize and to be able to see if your kids would enjoy the environment as well. So, to visiting different schools, to talk with the staff, to see the infrastructure, to see the schedules or things like that, in order for you to have a better idea of how things would be like, and that will really help you to make a decision, because things that are online, like even if you go on the school's website, a lot of these pictures are like stock pictures anyways. So it's not really like these are like how our students look like in our school. And so going there and seeing how the kids look like and how the facilities are and how clean it is or how big it is, that's how you can make a better decision, because you actually go and see it in person. Third point, the food, or that's fourth point, the food. Do you actually like the food there? Is the food too spicy? Is the food too bland? Is the food uh, great? Is there better access to organic, natural food? How do you like it, right? All of that is really, really important, because you might not be at top of your mind right now, but once you're there, and every day with all the meals is rice and beans, for example, and you don't like beans, well, that might be a problem. What are the alternatives? If you're vegan, for example, is there other alternative, or is there a lot of meat or meat flavors in all the food? Is that going to be a problem for you? Okay, so knowing that in advance is really going to be very, very, very important for you. In terms of traffic and transportation, is there access to public transportation if that's important for you? If it's not important for you, then how about things like Uber access, or car sharing, or things like that that might be important for you, or maybe hiring a driver if that's a possibility, and how good, how fluid, or how bad the traffic is at rush hour, if that's a deal breaker for you or not. So that's something that you'll be able to experience once you're there. And if you just read it somewhere on a blog or on a YouTube video, you just watch it, it's not the same, because the level of tolerance of somebody is not the same as yours. Like somebody's complaining about traffic jams, but maybe for you it's like, okay, you know what, it's not that bad because I lived in LA or something like that, right? So it really depends on your own experience. Next point is the weather. Okay, this one is a little tricky, because if you're going to a destination that's very seasonal, then you go during a specific season, and then you don't really know how it's like on the other half of the year. Then it might be a little tricky. For example, let's say that you go and visit France in the summer, super, super hot, right? And then you're like, okay, this is great, I love it. But then it gets also very cold and it snows in January. So are you going to be okay with that? So just because you visited during a season, and doesn't mean that you're going to like all the seasons. So you have to be aware of that. You have to do your research. That's something that you can know in advance, of how seasonal the weather is. And if it's hot all the time, if it's humid and dry, I mean, not humid and dry, if it's humid or if it's dry, like what kind of heat is it? Is it the humid heat, or is it a dry heat? And that could be that could make or break your whole Blaxit in a way. Okay, so knowing the weather and knowing if experiencing the weather is going to be very, very important as well. If you are into this, how about the nightlife? Is it something that is important to you, or not important at all? Or if it's something that, even if it's not important to you, if it's something that is very prevalent, like if there are a lot of like if the zoning laws are not the same as here, for example, where you can have a church like playing music all night right in the residential area, or having a nightclub close to a residential area, or bars very close to residential area. So these are the things that you will know once you're there. Once you do a scouting trip and you look at different neighborhoods where you could see yourself living, and seeing, okay, what's there, what kind of businesses are there, if there are mosques around, if there are churches around, if there are, public places, public establishments where people gather, that might get very, very loud at night or other times of the day. Okay, if that's a problem for you, that's something that you can kind of experience when you are doing your relocation trip. All right. Another point is the culture in general, language, religion, human rights, anything like that that you might, that might impact you personally. Like in terms of the language, is this a place where you can navigate if they don't speak, if English is not the main language? Are you comfortable with Spanish, French, whatever language is spoken here? Hey, Sam, good to see you here. Thank you for joining live. So, yeah, the language, is that something that would be a great test drive for you to Go and see if your Mexican Spanish that you learn is the same as Spain Spanish, which is similar but not always the same, right? And so are you okay with that? Are you okay with the speed at which they speak? If they speak too fast, or if they speak, or if probably if like, let me rephrase that. Not that they speak too fast, but that you're hearing too slow, right? Their speed is their speed, right? So are you okay with that? Are you going to get used to it? Probably, right? It's not, it shouldn't be a deal breaker. But if it's really hard to navigate the city and the daily task because you don't speak the local language, then through a scouting trip, you're going to be able to evaluate if this is a yes or no place for you. Okay. Also, going to stores, that's something that I did in Abidjan, and that really helped me to also evaluate availability of certain products that might be imported, like, I don't know, chips, Oreos, and things like that that we have here, and seeing if they have those here. Not that it's a deal breaker if they don't have it, but just to get an idea of what they have and what kind of familiarity we can expect over there. Looking at the prices as well, prices of food, prices of school supplies, and things like that. That way you can also adjust your budget. I highly recommend that you already make a budget before you go. That way you have something to compare it with, and then you can, increase or reduce and really adjust your budget as you go, whether it's to experience activities like going to museums, going to restaurants, going to taking Ubers, for example, and the cost and based on the distance, and different things like that that you'll be able to adjust on your budget because you've actually experienced it. It's not just based on an app or based on a website like Numbeo or based on what people are saying on YouTube, but it's actually your own data, is data that you have collected because you were there, right? You're the one who paid for these things. Another very important point is travel to and from the destination. Let's say you pick, I don't know, you pick Morocco, and there's no direct flight from your hometown here in the US to, let's say, Casablanca. Well, you're going to have to go maybe through Spain or through France, and it's going to take you, let's say, I don't know, 13 hours to get there. Are you okay with that? On your way there, evaluate, are you comfortable? Is this a long trip? Can you see yourself doing that once or twice a year if needed? If something happens with loved ones back home, are you okay with having to take 1, 2, 3 planes and being in a different time zone? So that will be a chance to really experience that and see how you feel about the whole thing, and see if this is a deal breaker or not for you. Okay, so time, travel to and from is really, really important to take into consideration. Another point is if you have an existing community there, even if it's people that you don't know yet, but having a community like of expats that you can already network with on Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups, and then meeting them during your relocation trip. That way, you already have those, those relationships there. These people can actually take you to visit apartments or recommend lawyers, recommend realtors, things like that. That will make your stay a lot more pleasant and a lot easier because you will already have some, things that are familiar to you. Okay, even if you're going to a completely different environment, it's good to to have some familiarity as well because it just eases the whole process. Okay, another one, very, very important, depending on where you go, very important, infrastructure. And I mean water and electricity, mostly these two, because it's not just about availability of it. If there's like water cuts or blackouts and things like that, but also the quality of the water, and the quality of the internet speed, for example, if you're working online. These can be deal breakers for you, and you won't know until you experience it because somebody's speed is not your speed. Somebody's tolerance to blackout is not the same as your tolerance. You have to be there and experience it to see if you're like, oh, that's okay. It was just once a day. No big deal. For somebody else, just having one blackout a week is a big deal. All right. So you have to know what is your level of tolerance, and you have to experience it in order to really know what your level of tolerance really is. Because you might say, oh, no big deal. But once you're there and it happens, you might be like, you know what? I don't like that at all. So you have to be able to experience it in order for you to really have a good sense of if this is a deal breaker for you or not. All right. The last point that I had, mostly if you're going to move with kids, again, is to be able to engage in family-friendly activities. So, for example, going to high-end restaurants on your scouting trip is probably not the best thing to do if you plan to move with small kids, because what are the chances that you're going to actually go to high-end restaurants with your family? I mean, maybe that's your thing, but going to restaurants that cater to families and bigger groups, that could give you a better idea of how they cater to kids and things like that. Again, the scouting trip is basically a way to mimic what your regular life is going to be like once you move there. It's not for you to go on vacation and live your best life, although that could be it as well. But it's really a test drive. It's a way to it's like you're doing a science experiment. Like you have the experiment is the miniature, the sample is going to be the scouting trip, and then the real thing is going to be when you actually move. So you want the sample to be as representative as possible of the big group, right? You want it to be as close as possible. So the things that you do, even if it's by yourself when you're going on a scouting trip, you want to look at it through the eyes of a parent if you're planning to move with your kids. All right. So activities for your teenagers, are they skating rings? Are they bowling alleys? Are they movie theaters where they play movies in English, for example? So different things that you can look at because you're coming with a family that will help you and your family better adjust. Okay, so those are my points that I have for you today to kind of help you out when it comes to preparing for your scouting trip. Again, I highly recommend you go on a scouting trip, at least one. If you can do more than that, perfect. If you can't, at least one. And as long as possible, in the US, I understand that we don't have like more than 2 week vacation usually. So you're gonna have to be a little clever in seeing how you stack your PTO and all of that so that you can have as many days as possible. And even if you cannot go with your spouse, or even if you cannot go with your kids, at least one person can go and kind of have a list of things to assess, a list of things to look at, so that when you come back, you can reevaluate all your goals and all of that. Okay. So it's really not just about, okay, let me go on a vacation and just go and have a good time. But you can have a good time and all of that, but you have to be looking at the destination from different eyes. It's not just the tourist eyes. It's more of a, okay, potential local person coming to live here. So how that life would be like for you and trying to adjust to the daily life, the daily boring life, like taking your kids to school, taking Ubers, going to the store, all of that, right? And even the things that you don't necessarily expect, like, tipping, for example, that maybe we don't do here in the US, like, for example, in public restrooms. That's something that is very common in Morocco, is when you go to a public restroom, there's always like an attendant, and then you give like a coin or two, right? That's something that you do. And so that's money that you have to account into your budget. So, but you wouldn't know that until you would actually be in that situation. And again, a scouting trip is not going to give you everything that you have to be prepared for, because once you're there, that's the real preparation. But it actually gives you a little appetizer, a preparation. That's the thing. It's not the whole thing. It's not the full trip, but it's something. All right, it helps you better prepare for the full move. Okay, if you have any questions for me, let me know in the comments. That way I will come back and answer your questions. And yeah, hopefully tomorrow I can come back with another live. I don't know about the time, but I'll come back again tomorrow for another live. Thank you for joining me live. Those of you who did, I so appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.